So what are we going to talk about today? So I've got a little bit of a presentation here. Presentation's only about 30 minutes going over Fabric and its constituent components. But then I've got a relatively comprehensive demo that talks about just some of the analytics basics of transitioning from just a purely Power BI environment over to Fabric and some of the changes and pieces that you will probably end up using and why we make those changes, what it actually supports you to do. So we'll talk about a bunch of these things as we go through. I'm going to first start talking about, what has been heard from a lot of customers over the past, couple of years and the challenges around analytics and their data ecosystems. We'll talk about Fabric and how it actually answers a lot of those challenges. We'll talk about some of the capabilities, the business value, and then how are we getting started. And that's where I'm actually going to go into the demo components of this. So let's kick this off. So what has actually been said about analytics environments in the past? There's lots and lots of challenges that have taken place. Folks are trying to lead their organizations in a data-first modernization direction. They want to be making decisions based off of data, and they want to be making off of analytics on top of those data. And there's lots of challenges that happen. From it can be difficult to navigate. It can be difficult to have a unified source of what the actual truth is. It can be challenging to understand who actually owns the data that you have and where it is. How do I access the data that is actually part of those components? Research shows that the amount of data that's going to be created over the next 3 years is more than the data created in the last 30. So managing these components is going to be increasingly more important, especially when it comes to cloud. It's going to be really interesting to see how folks manage their costs when it comes to these. And I actually think Fabric is going to be a really large component of managing those costs from a comprehensive standpoint. Because it does deliver a complete analytics platform that not a lot of other things will actually do from a complete end-to-end standpoint. There's lots of reporting tools, there's lots of integration tools, there's lots of analytics tools out there, but very few of them are they all integrated in such a consistent and comprehensive way. So that's one of the big things that Fabric actually brings to us. So even though data-informed decision-making and Power BI adoption, the scale is it's a really high priority, and there's organizations that are struggling to meet that scale. What Fabric does is it creates a unified source of truth. And what I like about that phrase is that's different from what we used to say of in analytics being the single source of truth. You don't necessarily have to have a single source of truth, but making sure that it's all unified across the board is really what's important. It is okay to have some things duplicated and that the data is cohesive. Like I said, as long as it's unified across an organization. It also needs to be democratized. So when we're talking about, how do I improve democratizations and insights with easy to use analytics tools? What this means is that we need to ensure that the people that need access to the data that will help them make decisions within an organization, that they actually have access to this data. That's where the democratization comes in. And again, Fabric addresses this in a very nice way. It's good to see that with a couple of clicks of buttons, I can make sure that somebody has access to do the analytics that they need right away. And the other part is it can be slow to get value out of the data that you have. So whether that comes from complex tools to it going through very complicated processes to get to an analytics standpoint where you can actually make a decision based off of the data that's being provided. This is one of the main things that gets addressed, is that it allows you to accelerate. Everything's just all in one tool. I can go out, get the data, transform it however I need to, and then do the analytics on top of that data model. It allows us to handle basically any sort of data at any scale. So the current state of analytics is that why is this not? There we go. Okay. The current state of analytics and business intelligence can be described as being compartmentalized. It's inaccessible. It's difficult to get those insights out of, and it can be very costly to oversee. So by using comprehensive data and analytics technology, folks can overcome these challenges and can gain a competitive advantage. So instead of siloed and incomplete data, you could have this unified governed experience. Governed is a really important part as well. There's components that can be included in Microsoft Purview, where it can actually understand how data is flowing through your analytics platforms and see get the actual lineage of where data is coming from, how it's being transferred, and where it's being used to make those decisions, who has access to it, what are the definitions of various components within your models, and it makes it so that that is really nice to have. There's also challenges with technical skills. So it requires fairly advanced knowledge with some of these other tools. It takes years really to understand how data goes from end to end in many cases, and increasing that accessibility for end users allows this to become very performant and allows us to make those insights across the organizations. And lastly, some of these tools have fairly costly and not only costly, but opaque costs. It's hard to understand where our costs are coming from. Again, transitioning over to Fabric allows us to understand these costs at a much greater detail and at a finer grain. So it can see, if I'm using various data engineering components, what are the costs associated with that? If I'm using real-time components, what are the costs associated with those? How much of my various capacities are being used in those circumstances? So enough about the challenges. How does Microsoft actually address these with Fabric? So it's a one-stop shop. You don't need to go out and provision any other tools for this to work. You get data integration in Data Factory, which is going out and connecting to data sources that are not in the ecosystem yet. There's data engineering, which is the transforming of data into analytical models. Real-time intelligence in using things like KQL databases and all of these event-driven architectures. There's data science components that become increasingly important. So if anybody out there has been doing data science experimentation, you can do all of those things with Microsoft Fabric as well. You can provision and utilize models in Fabric. And then lastly, the piece most people are familiar with in Power BI and all of your business intelligence needs. So if I need end users to be able to query their data in an ad hoc fashion, it allows our end users to get access to that data all in the same environment. They don't need to go anywhere else. It's all just there for you. You get access to the data in a private and secure setting. So by joining a lot of these companies and using Fabric, you're going to enable your teams to experience an end-to-end integrated single solution that's easy to understand, onboard, and operate. So with these solutions, you no longer have to stitch together multiple services, analytics solutions, BI solutions, reporting solutions to get the answers that you're looking at. So, like I said, you get that unified source of truth in a democratized fashion, and it's quicker to implement and cheaper to actually run from an end-to-end standpoint. So Fabric combines a number of different components that folks may be familiar with within the Azure ecosystem, including Azure Data Factory. So this is the data integration component. So that's the one that used to go out, get data, bring it into various data lakes. There's Synapse Analytics. So that was where you would either perform transformations using things like Spark pools or dedicated SQL pools, or the serverless Synapse, the serverless SQL pool. There was Azure Data Explorer, which was for doing those real-time or event-driven analytics. And then Power BI being the reporting experience. All of these are being brought in to a single unified experience. All of this rests on the data lake foundation called OneLake. Uh, when Microsoft says one lake, it means that each tenant has one lake associated with it. We're not provisioning multiple data lakes all over the place associated with multiple Synapse environments. It's all in a single lake that folks can use across the organization. And it allows us for an optimized experience, allows you to do machine learning, put AI workloads on top of this, and it really does lay the foundation for doing modern data work. So if you need to run things like large language models on top of your data, if you need to train these data models, you're able to do that that type of interaction on top of your own lake in a consistent manner. So lots of folks that we're talking to are generally coming from an existing Synapse environment or an existing analytics environment. So you can still enjoy the benefits of Synapse if you want to continue using those, but it also allows you to gradually transition some of the workload to Fabric. One of the things that we're recommending folks do is that they build out the final gold layer of their analytics model. So the data that is actually going to be loaded into, say, a Power BI model, that they perform that activity within Fabric, because it actually allows them to realize the direct lake capabilities of Power BI. So they can have extremely large models and not have to use the import capacity from Power BI. Now, there's complicating factors and all that kind of stuff, and speak to us if you would like to learn more about that kind of thing. But it does allow you to have much more performant analytics on much larger data sets. All right, let's talk about some of these capabilities. We'll talk about each of these ones in a little more depth. So when we say lake-centric and open, what we mean is that it's a unified governed source of truth in a single experience. Lots of folks are becoming more and more familiar with Delta Lake operations, and almost all of the experiences within Fabric use the Delta Parquet format. So it allows you to do some rather complex operations on top of your data sets and have ACID compliance. These are the transaction-like experience that folks may be familiar with within a SQL server, but it also completely separates the storage of your data from the compute on top of that and allows us to manage those costs in a much better way. It also centralizes the experience for each of your users. So secure, democratized analytics. I've said this a couple of times, but it does behoove us to say it's important to recognize that everybody in your organization can get access in a governed, secure way to the data that they need. And then they can perform whatever sort of transformations or analytics on top of that they need to. It gets them to valuable insights quicker. And it happens in a scalable fashion. So if you're not having quite enough compute, you can just scale those operations up a little bit, and you have more fine-grained control about how that happens. So Fabric simplifies the process of securely and responsibly discovering and analyzing reliable data from diverse sources. Uh, this happens from governed hubs that teams can access. Uh, One of the things that folks may have started to see with their various workspaces in the Power BI experience and now Fabric experience is that you can actually have different domains associated with this. And that allows folks to know who is actually in charge of these different workspaces, different bits of data within an organization. It creates accurate, trusted, and real-time data that teams can deliver more powerful insights by connecting disparate data sources together in that one lake. No matter what engine you decide to use, whether that's the Spark engine or the SQL warehousing or real time, uh, everybody contributes to building out that same data lake. So again, I'm in Calgary. We do a lot of work with various oil and gas companies. So you don't end up with the data tailings pond or the data swamp that has been rather uh, ubiquitous across industries over the past dozen or so years. There was a lot of hype about data lakes, and then folks started not being able to have these things governed in any sort of way, and it just started to degrade over time. And this is what one of the things that it allows us to do is that we have good organization around our data lakes. So on top of this, consolidation of data and analytics promotes better collaboration between teams. Has anybody ever been in the situation where, I'm maybe in an operations side and I need to reach out to my finance department to get answers from them? Well, now I don't need to necessarily do that, or it actually fosters the communication and coordination between our teams. We have a single experience across the organization so that you're not butting heads all the time. Uh, this allows us to eliminate the integration tax, if you will, and keep data protected across the organization. So even if I do need to get that answer, I don't have access to the things that I'm not supposed to. So this empowers everyone to uncover the insights for data-backed decision making. Self-service, low-code BI and visualization tools, as well as industry-leading accessibility features make this possible. I will say one of the things that I have been striving for over the past couple of years is actually utilizing these accessibility features because one of the things that's actually really interesting is that it never hurts your reports to make them more accessible. Things like understanding color blindness within folks, people that need to navigate a report using their keyboard and not a mouse. Understanding how these things can be done makes all of your reports better, and it makes it easier to implement using tools like Fabric. It also allows us to share these insights seamlessly across the organization by building compelling interactive visuals and productive business applications that people can use. You turn Microsoft 365 into a BI hub that folks can use, and you can use custom applications, embedded analytics, and increase this type of capability within your organizations. Like we said, with other components being separate, it could be very challenging to understand how much different components cost or how my whole solution cost. And with Fabric, all of that gets centralized for you. You can understand if my operations team is running rather large data integration models, and then they're doing lots of compute on top of that. We can understand and optimize those components together as well. This is where a lot of that value tends to come from. It's simple, it's transparent, and you can see how all of this happens, and you're just subject to one bill when it comes to the actual Fabric experience. It's also very easy to sign up for and onboard your folks to. So it'll help drive adoption within the organizations as well. But what can the business actually expect to leverage? So one of the things that is really nice is that with all the disruption that's happened over the past few years with AI, there's no secret that technology is way it's quite a ways away from future-proofing from tomorrow. So to remain relevant and resilient, organizations are needing to utilize these large language models and tools like Copilot to build out their components in a rapidly changing environment. What's nice about this is all of this is done without sacrificing security. All of it's done in a single governed environment. Your data is not pushed outside of the four walls. You just get to leverage the components that are provided to you. So as data is stored and encrypted, and it's not used to train the other foundational AI models. So it's just stored within your tenant at that point. Almost every layer is infused with AI experiences designed to leverage those tools to build out components that you may not be necessarily as familiar with. You may not know how it needs to be done specifically, but you can use tools like Copilot to actually build out things like data pipelines or generate code or DAX, because lots of folks have challenges writing DAX, and Copilot's actually pretty good at it for those pieces. It also allows us to build out visualizations for us. So it's really nice to see how you can use these types of tools to get you started, and then you just tweak. One of the things that I'm finding in the current era of AI is that a lot of my job has started to transition to editing. So I can generate large amounts of data assets, and then it's my job to go in and edit the bits and pieces that are useful for me as an end user. So it allows you to future-proof your business by doing less. You can do more. You got flexible pricing. It's easy to deploy. It's secure, and it allows you to leverage these components in a cohesive fashion. So enough about the little bits here. I'm going to quickly jump into our demo, and then I'll give you guys a quick look at our proof of concept, or if you want to book a consult with us, there's some of these that can be really useful. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to stop sharing this one, and I'll start sharing my other screen here. All right. So what I wanted to do in this demo here is I've built out a couple of different components. The idea was that, I have a Power BI report, and I'm not a visual designer, so this may not be the most beautiful looking thing that's out there, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be beautiful in this regard, although it can be. And I have folks in my team that are much more adept at doing that type of thing than I am. Right now, you can see that this data is from the 16th to the 18th my underlying data model in here doesn't actually produce data on Sundays. And what I'm going to do is actually walk through how this goes from transitioning from just using Power BI and possibly Power Query and doing its data refreshes. And we'll walk through how I've broken out various components for us to use as end users. So right now you can see there's not much on the screen other than my month-to-date sales. So we can see, as of, what was this, June 15th, so it was Saturday, I had $509,000 of sales up until that point this month. So we'll walk through how we get there. First thing that ends up getting separated from Power BI that's not too different from the traditional experience is the semantic model. So let's go back to my workspace here and look at that semantic model. The big change with Fabric is that you can actually manage your semantic models in the web experience now. So right here, this is just my underlying semantic model. I've got a fact table in the middle here with my sales orders. I've got various dimension tables in my customer, my employees, some stock items in there, various amounts of date tables for me to use. I can build out almost any of the bits and pieces that I would with Power BI right now. I can't add new columns at this stage, but I wouldn't want to anyways, because I can do that type of thing within my Lakehouse, and it actually makes the data more performant and stored in a more compressed fashion anyways. So adding new columns is actually against most best practices of Power BI. If you want to add columns, do it in Power Query, that kind of stuff. But you can manage the relationships just like you would within Power BI. You can manage roles and add various layers of security to semantic models. You can now actually add calculation groups as well, but there's some limitations for doing that, so I haven't done that at this stage here. If I needed to bring in additional tables to my model, I can expand my models in here. You can see I've got some orders and order line tables that were used to create this sales order. So those don't necessarily need to be used in this semantic model. But if I start adding additional fact tables or additional dimension tables, I could start adding those in here as well. As always, we could always add DAX and additional calculated measures in here. So this is just a very basic measure that I use. You could add additional measures that we've got in there and do almost all of the same components that we've done within Power BI itself. So this experience is actually very, very similar to what you would have in your existing Power BI files, except the data model is now using a direct lake experience. Let me just zoom in on that if I can right there. So you can see direct lake. So this is querying my underlying lakehouse natively. And I don't need to worry about updating a Power BI file separate from my data lake. I can just update the lake and do whatever data integration components I need to within there. So stepping back even further, there's lots of different pieces for how data gets handled. So I can actually take a look at the lakehouse at this moment here, and we'll see where that semantic model is actually pointed to. So over here in your lakehouse, you have access to various tables that have been built out. All of these are Delta Parquet tables. And we also have file components as well. So in here, I've got some sales. We'll expand, say my order lines for now. These are just the various files that I've been pulling into my lakehouse for me to integrate with. Go back to customers here. You can see this is exactly the same way that data would appear in a lakehouse table. This has only got 697 or 674 records, but let's go to our sales order table for now. This is the same fact table that is used in my my Power BI table, and this one has significantly more than 1,000 records in there. I think there's somewhere to the tune of a couple 100,000. And you'll see very quickly here that the actual calculations that are done on top of these of the lakehouse are very performant as well. We can build out new notebooks if folks want to do things like training out AI models or adding additional components to these types of tables. But it also allows us to build out machine learning experiments as well. So how does data get in here? Well, that's where various integration components happened. And there's a couple of main experiences that happen in there. I'm going to go to my integrate folder here. The big ones is that a lot of the time we're going to start using data flow Gen 2. Now, these are different from the old data factory data flows in that it's almost a drop-in replacement for Power Query. I haven't come across anything that I could do in Power Query that I can't do in this data lakehouse, the data flow experience. The big thing that gets added is that you actually have a destination for your data sets in here. So right now, all of my data ends up being loaded into various lakehouses. But if I wanted to, let's cancel that for a second here. I'm not going to end up changing this, but it suffices to say that I could put this into a warehouse. I could put it into a data lake. I could load it to a SQL server if I wanted to, but I can use Dataflow Gen 2 to load these components in a very cohesive way. There are some limitations at this point that I know are being worked on right now. And if I just go to my sales table, we'll just have a quick look at how this goes in here. So you can see this is the table that's being loaded. The big one is that right now the only two ways of updating data are by either appending data. So if I'm adding new records, those can be added very easily, or I am replacing my entire data set. Right now, this doesn't have the concept of updating a record. To do that, we would actually need to utilize various notebook capacities or other transformation jobs. You can do that with SQL warehouses and other components as well. But the big one that I like to use, and I recommend a lot of organizations use at this point, are Spark notebooks. It does allow you to use relatively familiar SQL syntax, or for folks that are familiar with PySpark or Scala, or I think there's the Spark R language within Fabric right now. You can use those as well. One of the big ones that has not come over from Synapse is the C# or .NET experience, but there were very few people that were using that type of an API from my experience. So there's also nice components out of this that you can actually copy a transformation out of Power BI and drop it into the data flows, and it just works. It is actually really, really impressive how it actually uses the exact same Power Query that you would be using in Power BI to enable you to get this working. Let's go, and it's going to make me navigate out of my Power BI, or sorry, my data flow here. Yes, I want to exit. All right, let's go back to integration here. Next one that I want to show you guys is that when we are refreshing these types of models, we have access to doing that using the Data Factory pipeline experience. So you may be familiar with this type of view where, here's some parameters. I've got, well, there's nothing that's showing right now just by not clicking on anything, but I could look at a data flow in there for now. Let's make that a little bit bigger for folks. And you can see how this data flow actually gets run. We can see I'm running the sales dimensions. That's the data flow that I was just showing. And there's lots of different components that happen within here. The other one, you can invoke other pipelines. So this is what I end up doing, because the way I separate my models is I'll tend to refresh my fact tables in some pipelines, and I'm going to refresh my dimension tables in some other pipelines, and just provide that separation. So when I actually go out and schedule something like this, I'm going to trigger this whole component to refresh. But when maybe midday comes by and I've got a manager that says, "Hey, we need our sales table redone," and I don't want to refresh the entire model because that might take a couple of hours versus the sales order could take a couple of minutes to actually refresh. So it allows you to separate those components in a really nice way as well. So let's take a look at this pipeline here. This is going to be one of the more complex pipelines, even though it's not very complex at this stage. I've got some parameters that I end up using. This is the same copy experience that you're probably familiar with if you've been using Synapse or Data Factory for a reasonable amount of time. We can connect, in this case, I'm connecting to a SQL server that I've got running in the background. This is just the Wide World Importers database that's out there. And we run basic SQL queries, and you can see over here, let's see if I can zoom in on that again as well. And let's go, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit on that. There we go. And you can see we have syntax like this that allows us to replace bits of our SQL and make it completely dynamic based off of the parameters that we used. Again, many folks are probably familiar with this type of experience already using Synapse or Data Factory because it's the exact same query language that is utilized in those. And I can incrementally load data and update the data from there as well. And that's one of the things that I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you in 1 second here. So that pipeline where we're copying sales orders and my order lines, they're exactly the same. The only difference between these is that they get placed in there. It's a slightly different query. And then on the destination side, where it actually gets loaded to, I'm loading into that same sales lakehouse that I showed you before. If we were to browse the lakehouse, you can see I've got a folder called WWI, stands for Wide World Importers. There's a sales folder in that. Inside the sales folder is going to be my orders and order lines folders. And then within each one of those, I have all of the files that I've loaded on an incremental basis as well. And apologies, I'm just going to take my this to my other screen because I wasn't sure if any Q&A has come through. Again, if there's any questions that come up, feel free to ask them in there. Yeah, so you can see orders, order lines, and this should show a couple of Parquet files that I've been loading over the past couple of days here. Wait for that to load. If it doesn't, well, we can just, okay, perfect. There's my Parquet files that have been loaded. All right. From there, a lot of what I tend to do is start running notebooks or Spark jobs. Right now, a lot of it tends to be notebooks because a lot of it it's very exploratory. And notebooks are, when you run them in the fashion that I'm going to show you, it actually ends up being pretty performant in relation to other notebook experiences. One of the big frustrations I had with Synapse is that when I would run these notebooks, it would take a couple of minutes for those notebooks to actually start, and it would start the Spark experience in Synapse. I'd need to spin up my my Spark pools. It had to warm things up, and then it would actually run the job or notebook that I had in there. Within Fabric, that experience is significantly faster. It only takes a couple of seconds to actually attach to a Spark pool in here and run things. So I am really happy with how these get run. So I'll end up showing you a couple of these in a second here. This is just going to be, I've got 3 or 4 notebooks that get pulled. The big one is that each of these get passed a parameter. In this case, it's just a date string because I'm passing I'm incrementally loading these bits of data. I've got a couple of different notebooks in here. One called we're doing the order merge, we're doing the order line merge, and then we're merging the sales, where we're combining those two data sets together. And then it just passes each of these in as a date string, because this is a parameter that gets passed in as well. So this is how I tend to coordinate a large amount of notebooks that need to get run that are still related in that way. You can get them significantly more complex if you need to do to execute these in a dynamic order, or if you need to just run a couple of them. So it can get more complex than what I'm showing you here, but in a lot of cases, just running them sequentially tends to be good enough. So let's take a look at two of these notebooks, because the order merge and the order line merge end up being relatively similar. So I'll just show the order merge right now. And this is actually associated with the lakehouse that we had beforehand. So you can see here's all my tables. In the file section that I had down here, I can actually access any of the Parquet files that I was integrating from my pipelines as well. Again, same thing here. This gets passed in as a parameter, and then we do a bunch of different components here. So here I'm reading that specific Parquet file. So the only thing that's really important. Oh, why is that going to the end there? Oh, that's so it allows us to dynamically load any one of these Parquet files that I want, and then I integrate that file. In my next code cell, I'm integrating a couple of columns, so I'm adding the year and the quarter and the month. What this is for is that a little further down, we actually have partitioned these files. So a Delta file, in order for it to be rather performant, we partition the underlying data set that gets run. So when I actually query this based off of the year or the month, the year or the quarter in this case, it only reads the files that I'm actually interested in loading at that point in time. So it makes the analytics a little more performant to do something like that. Then down here, we're loading delta tables. So you can see this is saying a delta table. Again, I might zoom in on some of that over there. We're loading delta table called DT orders. And it comes from a slightly different area over here. It's just coming from tables/orders, because the files that are in the lakehouse and the tables that are in the lakehouse are more semantically separated than they are physically separated. They're just in different folders. That's all that happens here. Down here, this is just for printing off these columns, because I am lazy and I like getting code to write my data set or my statements for me. We're just doing a regular SQL merge in this case. We have our delta table here. We're merging in the data frame that I wrote that I read before. So this is that each one of these Parquet files, whichever day I am loading on an incremental basis, and then we're either updating the records if it matches based off the order ID, or we're inserting any new ones that get put in there. That's all that's happening in this. It's very, very simple. I'm going to close off this file here, and I'm just going to open up the sales one, because it was only very slightly different, because instead of querying specific Parquet files, what's nice about this is that we can query any of our tables within the lakehouse as well. You can see this is a SQL statement. I believe I thought my statement was in here somewhere, but actually it's right here. So you can see there's basically my SQL statement that I end up running. I'm joining my order lines or my orders and my order lines tables from the lakehouse and combining them in a consistent way. And then this, all it does is undo. There we go. All I'm doing here is I'm dynamically calling which records need to be integrated on that specific run. So this is how a lot of how I tend to do various incremental data loads in this regard. Same thing as before. We're just updating any of the records that have changed, and we're adding any records that haven't. That's it. It's very, very simple. So let's just quickly run one of these and take a look at how fast this actually will go. So let's say that our manager came to us and said, "Hey, I need to refresh the sales orders from our table. Can you do that just by itself?" And I'm going to go to here, and because this is separated in a consistent way, I don't need to refresh just the entire or sorry, I need to refresh just a component of my model, not the entire thing, because the entire thing may take a couple of hours versus the one component may be very quick. I go in here, say extract my sales orders. We're just going to run this. I'm going to say run, and I'm going to have to put these values in here. So this will be 2024. Normally, I would have this type of thing done automatically for me, but in this case, it's easy enough just to put this in there by hand, and it makes for it allows me to do demos in a more consistent way as well. So it's going to queue up the copying. It copies things in parallel for me, and then it's going to run each of my notebooks one after the other here as well. We should be able to see, how data is being copied. It'll break things down of what's actually doing, transfer some data over, and my orders have completed, my order lines have completed. Now it starts running the notebook, and in here, it does take a moment to start, but it's actually not as long as it has been within Synapse. I think this will take just a couple of seconds here if I remember this correctly. See, it's already started. It's been running less than 20 seconds. So it's running 3 different components. If I need to monitor that execution, I can actually see how fast is Spark running in this case. It'll go through and actually handle my these components as well. It says, okay, well, we're running this, that, and the other thing. I could dive into each one of these if I needed to, and I can actually handle this in a more performant way. Let's just quickly go back to this. Oh, it went to my workspace. So let me go back to my Fabric demo workspace there. And we'll go back to my extract sales orders, and hopefully it shows things still running. We'll find out. Perfect. Okay, so it's been running about a minute so far, but it won't take very long here to complete everything. Like I said, it does have to run 3 separate notebooks from that parent notebook as well. Oh, there you go. Less than a minute and a half, and it's done. Now, what's nice is I can just go back to my visualizations, back to Power BI, and have and show that data has actually been updated. Now, because I was in this and it cached everything, I do have to hit this little refresh button, but it'll go through and it'll show me, hopefully, that some data has been actually put in there. I trust it should open that momentarily. Well, perhaps the demo gods have not smiled upon me today, but the point is that it should update our data sets automatically. I can go through. We'll go to our data set here, and I'm just going to quickly query some of my lakehouse in 1 second here, and just show that here's my my sales orders. Let's go there, and we'll just quickly query 1 second from there. We'll see my sales orders. And we'll order by and let me just run that. I can spell things correctly. All right. There we go. Top 100, because my life makes it easier that way. Let's just order by order date descending. There we go. All right. And you can see we've got data as of the 15th in there. So it was integrating a couple of pieces day after day there. So I'll have to troubleshoot parts of that, but the point is that it does integrate all my my data sets relatively cohesively. If I were to go back to my lake house here, you'll end up seeing that I do have additional Parquet files that were added for each of those orders and order lines for the 17th. So it is in there. I'd have to double check, why there wasn't any data loaded, but that's more for troubleshooting at a later date. So I know we've only got 4 minutes left, and I hopefully have shown enough of this to be dangerous. One last thing I will show you is that I have not shown everything that's in here. I haven't gone over the data activator, which shows that you can trigger actions based off of data that you have, or KPIs or streaming data. I haven't gone into any of the machine learning or data science components. Data warehouses are very similar to the lake house that I showed, so it's probably not too interesting to show that right now, but you can actually mirror other databases in here, including Snowflake. So that's a really nice thing to have. I haven't shown paginated reports or any of the real-time capabilities that are in here as well. There is so much in here that is really useful for folks to see. So
Jared, there's a question just regarding user access to data in Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
Paul asked about answering questions about who looked at specific data in the last, X number of months. Basically, how can they look at analyzing what data was viewed by the actors under investigation? Report usage metrics shows users accessing pages of report, but not the granularity of what they do on those pages.
Yeah.
So looking to audit at like a very granular level on report usage.
That is a very interesting question. It's probably outside the scope of what we can cover in a demo webinar here. That one I would have to put a little more thought into. One of the big ones would be that in order to understand what a end user was actually querying, you would probably have to attach the underlying XMLA endpoint, which is the semantic model endpoint, and you would have to monitor the actual queries that are coming in. That could get very large and very complex pretty quickly. So from my understanding, there's no way to go back and do that. There's only a way of going forward. You could turn on that capability and start monitoring the queries that are being passed in, and to understand that. But I don't know if there's a way of going backwards to do that. So hopefully that addresses some of the question. We may have to get a little more into what you're actually trying to do with something like that. I would say in order to address that, you're much better off being prescriptive and doing things like having relatively fine-grained control over the security roles that folks are into, and turning on that capability. From my understanding, there isn't really an easy way to go back and do it. So hopefully that answers that question.